Justin Baldoni dropped some major receipts in his new lawsuit against Blake Lively. Blake Lively, WME, Ryan Reynolds, and the New York Times have all responded. So we will go through Baldoni's timeline and everybody's reactions to it. It's a lot. Get ready. Let's dive in.
You're listening to No Filter with Zack Peter, your go-to source for all the latest pop culture and reality TV tea, served fresh all week long. Now, let's dive in.
All right, guys, I'm just going to warn you up front. This is probably going to be a long episode because we have a lot of info that we are going to get to, because every day it's like there is just more and more and more about this Baldoni versus Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds situation that just continues to unfold. So get your notepads out so we can take some notes, because there's a lot. I'm taking you to school today. What, like it's hard? Laura says she likes it long. Laura likes long sessions. Long. All right. So we love a lot. Okay, I'm glad you guys like long episodes. This one might be a bit of a stretch, because I wanted to actually read through the Baldoni lawsuit with you with his actual timeline, because I found it pretty juicy. However, now we have Blake Lively that has her new lawsuit out. And everybody's reactions to it. So let's just start off the top with statements from WME, Ryan Reynolds, and the New York Times, because as we know, WME talent agency dropped Justin Baldoni shortly after Blake Lively's initial complaint in California went live. And in his lawsuit, he claims that WME was pressured by Ryan Reynolds to drop him. Let's start with their statement first. They said in Baldoni's filing, there's a claim that Reynolds pressured Baldoni's agents at Deadpool and the Wolverine premiere. At the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere, that is not true. Baldoni's former representative was not at the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere, nor were there any pressures from Reynolds or Lively at the time to drop Baldoni as a client. So this doesn't say that there wasn't ever any pressure from Reynolds or Lively. And it also says that this conversation didn't happen at the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere. But that's not to say that there wasn't a conversation. Listen, here's the thing. Hollywood's very performative. So when everyone's like, oh my God, everybody's coming out. And like that guy, Michelle Maroney, who I guess stars in A Simple Favor, the sequel, the movie with Anna Kendrick and Blake Lively. He came out and he's like, oh my God, Blake Lively, I saw, I could just see the pain in her from working on set with Justin Baldoni. I'm like, now he looks like a clown, right? Because it just, I don't know if she had as emotional distress as everyone claims emotional distress in a lawsuit. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. WME, everyone that's come out in support of Blake Lively, one, I don't think knows all of the details, and two, nobody wants to be on the wrong side of history, right? I've said it from the very beginning. It was very strategic to have the complaint, which is normally a confidential complaint that was filed in California, that was conveniently leaked to the New York Times, along with all of the documentation that they claimed that they reviewed before publishing this article. And then they made the entire complaint in California available to download via PDF. So easy for everyone to be able to access and read the details. It all felt very strategic and intentional. So when everyone's coming out and they're just like, oh my God. And of course they picked the New York Times because, like I said, New York Times was the one that broke the Harvey Weinstein story and, did the Ronan Farrow and Rose McGowan, like that whole thing. So it was like, oh, it's strategic. So of course everyone's going to come out and be like, what? There's this Blake Lively is making these allegations against Justin Baldoni. Like everyone was like, oh, we're going to be on the right side of history. We're going to make our statements in support of, a woman who's making these allegations without waiting for any of the additional story, context, information to come out. Like everybody just, I think, jumped the gun and was immediately gung-ho with like, we gonna do this. Stacey says, yeah, the New York Times didn't even put a paywall. Exactly. When I saw that, when I was like, wait a minute, normally there's a paywall in order to get to a New York Times article. And not only is there no paywall, but they posted a confidential document as an easy to download PDF. Like that feels a little strategic. And again, New York Times, Harvey Weinstein scandal blew up from the New York Times. Like it all felt very premeditated. So WME dropping Baldoni, not much of a shocker. I don't even think Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively needed to pressure WME, because WME wants to make sure that they make a strong stance, right? We saw that a lot in 2020, right? With, people with the, people that were getting canceled left and right. If you had some tweets from 10 years ago that, maybe seemed a little unsavory, or you had some tactless jokes, you were immediately canceled and everybody wanted to drop you within 48 hours. Okay. So we're kind of just seeing that happen all over again. Cancel culture in full effect. WME also knows where their bread is buttered, right? They're going to stick with Ryan Reynolds because he brings in the most money. They're going to protect their bottom line at the end of the day. Not much of a shocker that they dropped them. That's, I think, the real reason is they're protecting their bottom line. Next up, we have Ryan Reynolds. So in Baldoni's lawsuit, he claims that this meeting, this, as Blake described it, an all hands on deck meeting, went down to discuss all of this alleged misconduct. And Baldoni says that most of the people went into this meeting not necessarily sure what was going to be discussed. And then next thing you know, there were all these allegations of misconduct that Baldoni says he was unaware of prior to this meeting. And when Ryan Reynolds demanded that he apologize to Blake Lively, Baldoni refused to apologize for the entire list because he claims there were things on that list that he did not do, and he was not going to take ownership for, things that he claims he did not do. Also a very strong move, right? You have this whole list of 29 different things of misconduct that you're claiming. You bring in the executives, you bring in the producers, and then you make him, in front of your A-list celebrity, kind of get down on his knees and beg for mercy in front of them. Like, strong arm move, right? And then you're hosting it at your New York City penthouse. It was Blake and Ryan, Blake and Ryan's penthouse in New York that they invited everybody over to. So it's like you're on our turf. I got my big, strong A-list celebrity husband that's here, and I'm going to make him, speak to you in this tone in front of all of these powerful people, right? Well, Ryan Reynolds himself has not spoken out, but according to TMZ, there were sources close to Reynolds that say that the meeting did not blindside anyone, that everyone was pretty well aware of what the meeting was going to be about when they came over. They were all made aware of the allegations from Baldoni or against Baldoni towards Blake Lively, and that's why they were having this meeting to discuss it all. And they also claimed that Ryan Reynolds did not berate anyone, that he spoke in a very angry but stern manner, and that he just spoke very impassioned. Interesting that Ryan Reynolds was angry and spoke sternly and was impassioned. Because here's where I call bullshit, okay? Ryan Reynolds was not a producer on this film. Ryan Reynolds was not an executive on this film. Ryan Reynolds had no business being angry or stern or impassioned towards anybody that was a superior in the workplace to Blake Lively. In what scenario? Okay, let's just think about this. In any other scenario, when would your husband be allowed into the boardroom to meet with the executives and berate, or let's not even say berate, let's use their own words, impassioned, spoke sternly? When would someone's spouse be allowed into a meeting with executives where they would be allowed to speak sternly and impassioned toward anyone? It's insane. Like, that would never happen unless you have an A-list Hollywood husband that you're trying to flex your weight around, right? If you have a meeting with the board of directors and you have issues that you want to take up with HR, you bring your lawyer and your husband waits outside in the lobby, right? Your husband's not allowed in the boardroom. Your husband has no influence there in the workplace at all. He does not work for them. He was not a producer. He was not financing the film. He had no influence over the film that he should have had professionally, at least. We found out that he was secretly rewriting scenes with Blake Lively. So, like, Book Sweetheart says it's like Gen Z bringing their parents to job interviews. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Rad Rabbit said, but she thought someone called her fat. Well, that makes it okay, right? She thought that he was fat shaming her. So in that case, let's break all the rules, bring my husband into this meeting to speak sternly to people. Like, excuse me, that's completely inappropriate. If you're talking about misconduct in the workplace, then yeah, that's also misconduct in the workplace. If you're bringing your husband in to sternly speak to your boss. Baldoni, if we're saying that he's responsible for making sure everybody on set is safe, then he, with that level of responsibility, that does make him the boss, right? His production company is producing the film. He's also the director of the film. And he's her colleague in the sense that he's the lead co-star in the film along with Blake Lively. So, and then we hear from the New York Times. They released their statement in response to Baldoni's lawsuit against them. Baldoni also makes it clear that he will be suing Blake Lively. We'll get into her new lawsuit in just a sec. But the New York Times, their statement reads, "The role of an independent news organization is to follow the facts where they lead. Our story was meticulously and responsibly reported. It was based on a review of thousands of pages of original documents, including the text messages and emails that we quote accurately and at length in the article. To date, Wayfair Studios, Mr. Baldoni, and other subjects of the article and the representatives have not pointed to a single error. We published their full statement in response to the allegations in the article as well. We plan to vigorously defend against the lawsuit." They don't point to a single error. Well, the single error is that the narrative that was cast was misleading. And that's kind of how, trust me, I've also been on the receiving end of hit pieces from reporters in large publications. And I remember when that happened to me a few years ago. And it was like, these things, like, yes, you technically have all these pieces, but it's the way you lay the pieces out to manipulate the audience that makes it look more salacious than it actually is, right? It's the way you present the information where you can be like, well, technically these are little facts, right? You know, but it's like, it's how you feed it to people, how you show it to people, right? It's basically the marketing of the article, or the marketing in the article. It's the narrative that you lay out. Because here's the thing: if they didn't want us to believe that, you know, these text messages were in some way deceitful, then they would have shown the full context of the messages. They would have not shown Blake Lively's version of the text messages where, you know, the emoji was omitted and it changed the tone of it to make it sound more literal versus sarcastic. So there are just little things like that that's like, you know, I don't know. I'm a little questionable about the New York Times, but I think they're prepared. This is going to be an uphill battle for Baldoni. I think he has a strong case in terms of breach of contract, which I know he's also suing them for. And I think that has to do with the fact that they gave him a specific timeline, which was also really twisted. The way the New York Times, like, you have 14 hours to respond, and it was an overnight time period that they gave him to respond. They're like, listen, tomorrow morning we're running with the story. Let us know if you have anything. Like, that to me was also very strategic, that they gave him a tip off the night before, telling him he only has until the next morning to issue a response or to go through the article or to go through all the allegations. It's, to me, it's just like, it's fishy, right? It seems very suspect. So yeah, that's that. Then we have Blake Lively's lawsuit. So originally she filed a complaint, a CRD complaint in California, which is everything that everybody read, right? And it was very conveniently made accessible to everyone, not behind a paywall, as an easy to download PDF in the New York Times. Okay. Where now, and so a lot of people are saying, oh, well, the reason that she filed this complaint because it was, you know, her exercising her right to sue. She want, like, this was the precursor. She was going to file a lawsuit that's going to come, but she wanted to make sure she got permission first, right? Well, it's interesting because the second Baldoni dropped his lawsuit against the New York Times, Blake Lively had her lawsuit ready to go, and she filed it as a federal case in New York. So why would we be asking for permission to sue someone in California if we were always planning on suing them in New York? Interesting. Now, it's now become a federal case because the allegations have crossed state lines in regards to the crisis PR team, Baldoni's team, you know, all of this alleged social media manipulation, all very interesting. And then there's this woman. Her name is Ariadna Jacob. She is also currently suing the New York Times for a story that they covered about her. She has a case against them that she's bringing forth currently. But so she broke down this lawsuit with Blake Lively. I've liked a lot of her coverage of it because I did not read Blake Lively's newest lawsuit. I skimmed through it. From my understanding, it looks very similar to the original complaint that she had originally filed just before Christmas. So not much has changed. There aren't a ton of new details. There's no new evidence that's groundbreaking that's been revealed. It's pretty much a copy and paste of the original document with a few tweaks in it, right? So, but Ariadna Jacob does have, she posted a thread on X that I'll go through because she did a really good job. And because I didn't get to read it more in depth, I'll give her the credit and we'll recap some of her notes and what she thinks about this. But she made some really good points about the lawsuit and how this lawsuit kind of widens the scope, adding federal workplace law in addition to the original complaint, and how New York typically handles media and defamation cases where the harm crosses state lines. So it makes, more reasonable sense why she chose to do it in New York. And then there's the whole anti-SLAPP laws, whereas in California, the anti-SLAPP laws are stricter, and in New York, they're a bit more lenient. So it does protect Blake Lively more. She also thinks that it's a strategic move, since this would basically ensure that the trial could not be televised, as in the case with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. So a federal case in New York, we wouldn't be able to watch it play out the way we watched them play out. And so she seems to think, and I agree, this is a very strategic move to make sure that we conceal certain details from getting out into the public. Because like with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, it was like mom and dad fighting on the front lawn, right? And we were seeing all the dirty laundry just aired out everywhere. It was very messy. But it also helped us see the bigger picture, and it made Amber Heard look really bad because all of the evidence that was building against her did not support the narrative that she was trying to put out in the press when she wrote that op-ed against or about Johnny Depp. So, yeah. For the most part, the allegations are the same: harassment, retaliation, defamation, negligence, conduct. Not much has changed there, but I'm just going to read through some of Ariadna's recaps of this in relation to each of the different claims. So like I said, claims are harassment, retaliation, defamation, negligence in relation to the Rona, because she says that she caught the Rona and her baby caught the Rona on set, and it wasn't disclosed to her. And then there's the workplace misconduct. But so she says that the difference, or Ariadna says that the difference with this lawsuit in comparison to the original complaint is that it zooms in more on PR tactics, alleged media manipulation, and the reputable harm on a much bigger stage. So outside of just California, right? Because they're saying cross state lines. That's why they want it to be a federal case. Harassment. Lively's most serious claim involves alleged inappropriate behavior by Baldoni, like lip biting during a scene and sexually charged comments. What does she need to prove? So what does she need to prove? She needs to prove that the unwelcome conduct was, she did not give consent to it, and she did not invite this behavior, that there was severe and pervasive actions. So it can't be just an isolated incident. There has to be a pattern, right? And then it had to have impacted her work. So it must have in some way interfered with her ability to do her job. It made it, I'm assuming this is where she's going to lean into the emotional distress of like, oh my God, I had to keep doing scenes with him, even though he was like, so, he kept sucking on my lip, and I didn't like it when he sucked on my lip because it's so inappropriate, because the intimacy coordinator that I refused to meet with, didn't approve of that, which we don't know because we have the text messages where she wasn't interested in meeting with the intimacy coordinator up front. What kind of evidence will she need to bring? Witness testimony, text messages, or emails showing the complaint was ignored or corroborating the behavior wasn't a one-off. Without that, it'll be a tough one to prove. I agree. I think Baldoni did a really good job of bringing together objective messages from other crew members and other members on his team that showed that they were corroborating the narrative, or not the narrative, but they were at least corroborating what they were dealing with on set with Blake Lively and some of the challenges that they were all equally facing when it came to working with Blake Lively. Did Justin release the text? Yes, he did, Ness. He did release the text messages, and even showed that the pieces of the text messages that her team released were not within the full context, and he showed the full thread. He's like, here's what she released, and here are the two pieces of this message that she released and put together, but in reality, here's the full thread that shows there's much greater context. Yes, Baldoni did say, I did see that today, Ness. He did say that he wants all of the text, this is going to be a fight. He plans to sue her, and he wants all of their text messages to be released. They're not going to be released today, but he does plan in his lawsuit to make sure all of it. So he wants it. He doesn't want to cherry pick anything. He doesn't want to cut and paste anything. He wants everything to come out. seems like he's got nothing to hide here. Retaliation. Blake Lively's claims that Justin Baldoni's team didn't just ignore the complaints. They allegedly weaponized a PR playbook to destroy her. Think text messages plotting to bury her and media articles that say were coordinated hits. Lively has to prove her harassment complaints were the direct cause of the alleged retaliation. This is what I think is going to be challenging for her to prove. Retaliation laws aren't about bad vibes. They require a strong cause and effect. Was the media storm a targeted response for her speaking up, or a PR tirade for a chaotic production? So in the messages that Baldoni has released, they make it seem like the reason that they brought in crisis PR is because they were afraid that Blake Lively was going to bring forth these harassment allegations and make them public. And their concern was that they did not agree with the harassment claims that Blake Lively made. And we even found out in the messages that we saw Baldoni release that there was only one HR complaint that was ever filed during the production of It Ends With Us. And that one HR complaint was not filed by Blake Lively, nor was it an allegation against Justin Baldoni. It was a separate HR complaint between two crew members, and it was in regards to ageism. There was alleged ageism that was going on between these two crew members. The complaint was investigated, and it was ultimately cleared. So, without a smoking gun, she says, Ariadne, she says, without a smoking gun, a direct order from Baldoni to smear Lively, this will be tricky. If texts only show publicists in overdrive without connecting it back to Baldoni, that'll be a big legal gap. Plus, if Baldoni's team argues the PR blitz was standard crisis management and not a vendetta, Lively's retaliation claim might not hold water. Evidence here needs to hit as hard as the alleged smear campaign itself. Yeah, I think this is going to be a challenge for her to prove, to be honest. Because a lot of it is like storytelling. And I think a lot of the storytelling was to manipulate the media. But when you're in court, and this is probably why they don't want this to be aired publicly, like Johnny Depp wanted this to be televised. Johnny Depp wanted everybody to watch his case against Amber Heard go down because he wanted everybody to see the truth. Whereas in this case, it seems like Blake and Ryan, and here's the challenging part too. Johnny Depp did, to a degree, have the upper hand because he had more money, he had more power, even though his reputation was tarnished. In this case, you have Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Those are the two that hold the power here. So that's where it's really going to get tricky, is because they hold more of the influence when it comes to star power. However, I do think star power is starting to become more extinct, that it doesn't hold the same weight that it did. So we'll have to see how this all plays out. But I think this will be something. Christopher says she has no damn proof. We haven't seen any of the proof, I mean, other than these text messages that they pulled via subpoena. But like, again, like if they want to prove that this guy Jed was hired to do astroturfing to, bolster negative social content against Blake Lively, then they're going to have to like dig up the metadata to prove that. Because as of right now, we have text messages from Justin Baldoni to his PR team, and he's like, "Hey, we're not behind this, right?" And they're like, "No, we're not behind this." And then you have the other messages where they're like, "Yeah, we didn't tell Jed to do this." Like you have actual messages where they dispute this claim that this was a whole takedown and a smear campaign. Nicole, thank you for the super chat. Says many times when you went against the popular opinion, you ended up being correct. I'm curious, who do you see coming out on top here? It's really hard. That's a really good question, Nicole. You're right. I did always go against the popular opinion. And let's be clear, I went against the popular opinion last week when I was poking holes when we broke down and were reading through Blake Lively's original complaint. So who do I see coming out on top here? I don't know. Because there's like legally and then there's public perception. And I think public perception, the hard part is we're going into this era where people are so tired and fatigued with celebrity culture, right? Like Meghan Markle just dropped her new trailer for her new Netflix film where she's like, "Oh my God, come into my nice Montecito house and you're going to be at home with me and cooking with me. And we're cooking these out of touch British recipes." And it's like, Nobody wants to fucking see that. Nobody cares about Meghan Markle being this influential, this lifestyle influencer, this faux Martha Stewart. It's not 2014 anymore. People don't want that fake aspirational stuff anymore. We're moving out of that culture. We're moving out of culture where we idolize celebrities. And so I think, if anything, the reason the audience and the public are now becoming tuned into the Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni stuff is because it looks like David is going to take down Goliath, at least from what we're starting to see now. It looks like Blake and Ryan are Goliath, and Justin Baldoni went from being the predator last week to now being the underdog. He's now looked at as a David in this scenario, going against the big powerhouse couple that wants to put him down. So I think public perception-wise, Baldoni's probably going to end up on top in the end, but I don't know how this is going to play out legally, because I think Blake Lively and her legal team were very strategic, and they're really going to pull all the tricks that they can, and they're going to pull as many rabbits out of the coochie as they possibly can, with all of the magic tricks. So we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, the underdog always comes out on top. Yes, but not always in the court system, right? Legally, not always. So we'll have to see. But so, yeah, defamation is one of Blake Lively's claims. So this is Ariadna Jacob. Her breakdown continues. So defamation is one of Lively's big claims, but as a public figure, the bar has to be set sky high. Public figures don't just get to prove something was false; they also have to show actual malice, meaning Baldoni's team knew it was a lie and didn't care if it was a lie. Right. This is tough. Why? Because she's difficult to work with, or creative chaos on set aren't facts, they're opinions, and opinions legally are protected. Unless Lively has hard evidence, like "let's destroy Blake" text messages with Baldoni's fingerprints on them, this gets murky fast. I don't think she has a strong case. I think she's banking on her powerful team that's going to help her. Side note, if you've got a public Instagram account or a LinkedIn page, there's a decent chance that you're a limited public figure too. So the same defamation roadblocks could apply to you. Ridiculous but true, but maybe that's a thread for another day. Yeah, at this point, like, I would legally be considered a public figure. So that same bar, like, I couldn't easily just sue someone. Like, remember when Adam and I were getting into our fights online and he was saying things about me and I was saying things about him? Like, a defamation case would be very hard, right? Because at this point, we've put our lives out there publicly. So proving a public figure defamation case is very challenging, which is why Johnny Depp originally lost his defamation case against The Sun, which is why it was so interesting that Baldoni chose to go after the New York Times. But I don't think Baldoni is planning to win his case with the New York Times. I think he's planning to dig shit up in Discovery that he will use to bury Blake Lively. Ariadna says, unless Lively has a smoking gun, say like a text from Baldoni saying, "let's bury her reputation," connecting him directly to the campaign will be a tall order. I agree. Point is, defamation cases are no joke. I sued the New York Times for defamation, and let me tell you, it's an uphill battle that demands airtight evidence, insane stamina, and a willingness to have every inch of your life scrutinized. Yep. And I don't think Blake Lively has a lot of that. I think, again, a lot of it relies on her storytelling. She continues to the Rona negligence campaign, which Ariadna says it's giving office flu blame game vibes, but with a Hollywood twist. This I thought was really dumb. I get it if it were 2020 and you were trying to claim like, oh my God, there was an outbreak on set, yada, yada, yada. We didn't know as much. But now from what we've learned about this virus, it's more benign than, it was benign then, but I think there was a lot more media sensationalism that was scaring people, right? And there was, a manipulation of the data. And I don't think that there was honest reporting in that. Whereas in this case, it does appear to be a flu. And if there's a flu outbreak, like, if somebody's sick and comes onto set, like, you're not testing everybody at this point the way we were doing back in 2020. So even to verify who has a case or who doesn't have a case, like, all of those rules have very much changed. So I think this whole negligence case, I'm not even going to read much into it because I just think that that's a ridiculous one. And I agree with her. It's like, ooh, the flu blame game. Somebody came on and had the flu and you didn't tell us, and that endangered my life. Thank you. Next. Okay. Workplace misconduct. The workplace Misconduct claim is where things get very Hollywood specific. Think SAG, intimacy coordinators, and those strict standards and productions that are supposed to be followed. Blake Lively says that Baldoni set floored these rules with no intimacy coordinator, alleged unsafe work environments, and incidents like the lip biting moment. But here's the legal lens. California labor laws demand a safe workplace, and SAG guidelines set the gold standard for scenes involving intimacy and nudity. If Baldoni's production team skipped these, it's a problem. But what Lively needs is proof. Emails saying we don't need an intimacy coordinator or crew testifying about unsafe work practices. I agree. And from what we've seen so far, the crew seems to be on Baldoni's side of things based off of the messages that he's released. So it doesn't feel like people genuinely felt unsafe on the set, especially around Baldoni, with exception for Blake Lively and this other actress that she claims Baldoni said looked hot. Which then we saw with the comments about him telling Blake Lively that her outfit was sexy. And then he revealed the text message where she said she wanted control over the wardrobe of her character and she wanted her character to look sexy. So the beanie with the crop top made it look sexy. And then he's like, wow, you do look sexy. And then you add that context and it's like, oh, well, wait, that's a bit of a different story, right? Yeah, she will need some sort of email saying we don't need an intimacy coordinator, when in fact Baldoni has already released the text messages that show that there was an intimacy coordinator on hand on production. He offered to set up a meeting with Blake and the intimacy coordinator, and she declined. So it's going to be challenging, right? But also, Ariadna makes a really good point saying that SAG guidelines are not laws. So just because SAG says, this is the gold standard and this is what we think should happen on set, that's not necessarily the law that needs to be upheld on a set, right? It's just a guideline that is suggested by SAG. So she says SAG guidelines aren't enforceable by state unless they overlap with labor codes. So that's where you have like California labor codes. But I believe the majority of the movie was filmed in New Jersey. So if Baldoni's team played fast and loose, but technically stayed within the lines, this claim gets weaker. Right. And it seems like they do. Also, Baldoni says an intimacy coordinator was hired. We saw the lawsuit filed against the New York Times by Baldoni's side. Hiring an intimacy coordinator ticks the minimum compliance box, but Lively would need to show either the coordinator was sidelined, making their role useless, or unsafe behavior persisted despite their persistence with the intimacy coordinator. This isn't just a he said, she said. Witness testimony or ignored complaints are the receipts Lively needs to bolster her case. Without them, it could be argued this was a creative misstep, not misconduct. And that infamous lip biting moment, unprofessional if improvised, sure, but proving it crossed legal liability without showing that it was repeated or ignored complaints, that's a high bar. I agree. Lots of big allegations, but she's going to need a lot of evidence to really back up these claims, and it's not going to be easy at all. She can't just prove that like she felt uncomfortable. She has to actually prove that there was harm. But this is where I think she's really going to lean into the whole emotional distress of it all. Okay, and then we get into emotional and professional harm. Lively claims that the harassment and alleged smear campaign left her emotionally wrecked and professionally iced out. But this isn't just an I was upset. To win, she needs cold, hard proof. She also said that it traumatized her kids, all of this. But legally, emotional distress requires severe harm, not just bad vibes. I imagine she's going to probably pay off some therapist to be like, oh my God, she was so severely, damaged from all of this. And you need a direct link between Baldoni's actions and her suffering. So he did this as a result of that. She had to seek therapy over that for this. Her, and she's going to have some sort of paper trail to prove that. She says here, therapy bills, canceled contracts, lost deals. She needs receipts. In this case, I would assume when it comes to damages, she's probably going to show the hit to sales that her alcohol brand and her hair care brand took. But she also has to connect that specifically to the smear campaign that she alleges Baldoni and his team enforced, rather than just, the internet turning on her. She really has to prove that. Courts don't hand out payouts for hurt feelings. Lively's team has to prove measurable, tangible damage to her career and well-being. Proving emotional distress isn't just I was miserable. Lively has to show her anguish came specifically from Baldoni and his team, not postpartum stress, not the chaos of old Mean Girl viral clips resurfacing, and not just the general pressures of Hollywood. This is a really good point because she did just have a baby. So if she just had a baby, then that means there is likely some postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, like something that would affect her hormones and her emotions post baby, that I would then imagine Baldoni's legal team will argue that her emotional distress was likely not the results of their actions, but the results of her possibly experiencing postpartum, right? Like all they have to do is just muddy the waters enough to prove that there's reasonable cause, that there was something else that could have been triggering her emotional distress. Now, this is where you guys start thinking like a lawyer, right? And then when it comes to harm to her career, yeah, that would also have to be proved as well. Like there would have to be movie deals that were in the works that were canceled as a result of this, and a director saying, or a producer, studio saying, we fired you from this film because your reputation was so bad, right? Like she would need to prove that her career was significantly damaged. I think this is where she'll probably bring in her products and say that sales took a hit and that they bombed upon launch as a result of this. Because we know, at least when it comes to her career in Hollywood, after this, she went on to film A Simple Favor 2 with Anna Kendrick. So the sequel to the original doesn't really sound like she's getting blacklisted in Hollywood if she was still able to do that. And WME continued to keep her on board. They still represent her. They ended up cutting Justin Baldoni so he can prove damages on his end, right? WME dropped him. That's a very clear example. And they publicly dropped him, right? Publicly, disgracefully dropped him. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot. But so she's suing for, now that we have the official lawsuit now, but again, it's in New York, not California. She's suing for compensatory damages, which are cash for her emotional distress, lost gigs, damage to her reputation, punitive damages, which is like the judgment damages, like, the slap on the wrist damages that they want to punish him for. And then she's requesting injunctive relief. Lively wants the court to step in and stop Baldoni from continuing any alleged retaliation or defamation. She's also asking for a potential workplace reform in his future productions. Oh, is she planning to work with him again? Or is she just trying to make a statement? Okay, Claudia dropped a super sticker saying, my husband wouldn't let me participate in anything after those kind of allegations are made. So there's Ryan Reynolds promoting it and making fun of his wife's on-screen relationship. That's not adding up in any way. Yes, if there really was this, if it was such an unsafe work environment, why did she continue working? She doesn't have to work on the film. Why, really good question, Claudia. Very good point. I agree. You're technically still making money for the company that you're claiming did not keep you safe at work. Now, we do know that there were threats of her quitting or not promoting the film, but that was specifically in relation to the demands that she was making, like getting her PGA mark, her certification for, her producer credit. Claudia continues with another super chat. Claudia Pimentel says he did heavy promo. Ryan Reynolds did heavy promo for the film, even appearing in the press tour, making jokes and innuendos about Mrs. Reynolds' love interest in the movie. If she was indeed sexually harassed, that's a weird look for him now. That's a really good point. People should start to resurface those clips of Ryan. Like Ryan Reynolds is really going to get dragged into this now. I don't think that this is going to end up well for Ryan Reynolds. I think his reputation is absolutely going to take a hit as well. Brian says, what reasonable person would link Blake Lively's behavior to a drop in gin sales? How many people even know what brand she owns? Well, the thing is, she was promoting the brand while she was promoting It Ends With Us. So while she was on her press tour for the film, she was also promoting her alcohol brand and her hair care brand. And despite the promotion that she was doing for those launches, it was still not landing well, and people weren't buying it. Claudia Gonzalez says, how disconnected is it that she thinks that it would be okay to use a DV movie to promote her hair care and alcohol products? That's just sick. That's a point that Baldoni brings up in his lawsuit and his timeline. So I really wanted the focus of this episode to be on the timeline because I really wanted to read that through. And let's read it together. I'll try to skim through most of it because it is very long. But it is really juicy. And as I was reading, I was like, oh no, we have to read this together. But then we had, Blake's new lawsuit. And I was like, okay, we kind of have to cover that and break that down. But I will recommend you follow Ariadna Jacob. She is covering a lot as well. And there are some TikTokers that are putting a lot of videos out there. I mean, I know I'm doing more long form on the podcast, but there are people that are doing more short form videos on TikTok that are really good. And then on X, Ariadna Jacob, I think, is another really great resource, just as a shout out. Because especially since I'm not having the time to read all 50 lawsuits at once before reporting every day, I do like when other people have these breakdowns and these resources that are helpful, especially when I tend to agree with them. Okay, so here we go. Facts common to all causes of action. So we went over the summary and the brief of the Baldoni lawsuit yesterday. Today, we're going to get into the actual timeline and break it all down. So A, Lively uses unsubstantiated claims to bully Wayfair and Baldoni in an effort to take over the film. That's their first allegation against Blake, or against Blake in response to the New York Times article, because this is their lawsuit against the New York Times. Their lawsuit against Blake Lively has not come forth yet. Here we go. In or about 2019, Baldoni, through his literary agent, contacted the author of the book on the film on which the film is based. He expressed a deep interest in adapting the book into a feature-length motion picture that aligned with his history with the impactful storytelling. Baldoni envisioned a film that would shed light on the struggles of domestic violence survivors, amplifying their voices and inspire societal change. Driven by his unwavering commitment, often a significant personal sacrifice, Baldoni ensured the film stayed true to the vision, ultimately achieving its purpose. On or about May 8th, 2019, Wayfair secured an option for the book's rights. Okay, so we got the rights. We're going to fast forward through this. On or about December 2022. Oh, wait, here we go. Wayfair partnered with Sony to co-finance and distribute the film. The agreement included, at Wayfair and Baldoni's assistance, a requirement that 1% of the film's proceeds be donated to survivors of DV. That 1% was ultimately earmarked for the organization No More, with which Baldoni had wanted to partner as early as September 2022. So here they're saying this is where, when Blake Lively's team was accusing Justin Baldoni of only, wanting to focus on DV awareness during the promotion of the film, that was to feed his own ego. But here we have, before any of this was made public, that he wanted 1% of the proceeds from this film to be donated to the No More organization. On or about December 31st, 2022, Lively agreed to take on the role of Lily Bloom. As part of the subsequent negotiations, Lively was granted an executive producer credit and a title often associated with her talent of her stature. Wayfair did not request that Lively contribute to the film in any capacity beyond her performance and this credit. So it was more of a vanity credit that they gave her. Lively takes over wardrobe. On or about May 15, 2023, principal photography of the film commenced in New Jersey. During pre-production, Lively began to assert control over aspects of the film beyond her role as an actor and outside of the scope of her contractual entitlements. I don't know. She does, however, have an executive producer credit, so I believe she does have some influence that she can weigh in here. Whether they want to claim that it was only a vanity title or not, I'm sure in most cases they only give it to the actresses as a vanity title or as the lead actors as a vanity title. However, that doesn't mean that they don't have any sort of influence if they do have that credit, right? While lead actors are sometimes granted approval over the general look for their on-screen character, this authority typically does not include full control over wardrobe decisions without input from the director and producers. Nevertheless, Lively overstepped these boundaries, sidelining the production's costume designer, a seasoned professional with long-standing working relationship with Lively. Imagine that, like, your job is to be the wardrobe stylist, right? Like, you're a professional. This is what you do for a living. And then you have someone like Blake Lively that comes in and she's like, yeah, no, I'm not going to listen to you. I know better than you. I'm going to control my own wardrobe. Ignoring the director's vision for her character and disregarding the weeks spent by the entire team shopping through shopping and thoughtfully crafting her wardrobe in preparation for filming, Lively would send hundreds of images to the film's costume designer during all hours of the evening, pointing them in directions of appearance she wanted for her character. The costume designer then had her reshop her wardrobe, far exceeding the allocated budget and diverting time and resources. At one point, Lively even insisted that her character had money and could afford $5,000 shoes. Damn, I don't even have $5,000 shoes. I think the most expensive pair of shoes I have is like 1,200. $5,000 shoes, Baldoni, which had Baldoni rethinking the entire script that had been being worked on for well over a year and had been approved by both studios. Why does Lily Bloom need $5,000 shoes? I get it. She wants to prove this story of like this heroine, this woman that like overcame, but like, come on. Didn't she own a flower shop? Yeah. How many flowers is she selling to earn $5,000 shoes? Lively also several times refused to participate in wardrobe fittings at the production office, a mere 15 minutes from Lively's Tribeca residence. Instead, she insisted the costume department pack up the wardrobe department and deliver all of her wardrobe items to her. Loading the wardrobe department on trucks and delivering them to Lively's residence for fittings added both time to the production schedule and expense to the film. Two things production worked hard to avoid with careful planning. These demands were never mentioned at the contract negotiation phase and therefore were not included in the budget. Lively herself having a further obligation to the studio as an executive producer, paid no mind to the budget and the months of planning that had already occurred. Listen, you can say, give me a black car to drive me from Tribeca to, the fitting. And there you go. You have a black car that the studio pays for to take you to and from with the security. You don't need them to literally bring everything in and have you do all the fittings and everything. Like, I get it. You're a big Hollywood actress. Like, this isn't making her look good at all. And this is where I say the court of public opinion is going to turn on her and Ryan Reynolds. They're not looking good. People are tired of this. Even if Lively had the contractual authority to approve her character's wardrobe, which she did not, a grant of such authority would not and could not imply the rights to blow up the film's budget with additional unanticipated costs. In an effort to maintain harmony at the start of their working relationship and to avoid further delays caused by wardrobe conflicts, Baldoni and the studio reluctantly allowed Lively full control over her wardrobe. This concession quickly proved regrettable. This is where I think they should have been more on top of her and put their foot down. I know she throws tantrums, or allegedly, she's rumored to throw tantrums on set and like fight to get her way. But like, when you enable that behavior early on, you're setting that precedent. You're creating the monster out the gate, right? On the first day of principal photography, paparazzi captured and published photos of Lively's character wearing her self-selected wardrobe. These images were described as unflattering and sparked a backlash from the film's distributor, Sony. Baldoni received direct criticism from Sony, who voiced concerns about the impact of these photos on the film's public perception. Following these events, Baldoni approached Lively in her trailer to discuss necessary wardrobe adjustments. The conversation, while professional, took considerable time and was later grossly misrepresented in Lively's CRD complaint, falsely categorizing the exchange as a lengthy outburst that delayed filming and caused the crew to wait for hours while Baldoni cried in Lively's dressing room. This account, later published by The Times, is false. I do remember reading that in her account saying that, he was upset about the paparazzi photos because they called her frumpy or whatever. So they're saying that I guess Sony, and I'm assuming they have communications with Sony that they'll be able to provide that can prove that Sony wanted there to be changes. Lively probably was fighting back, and it was maybe a tense exchange is what I would imagine. Okay, next. Although Baldoni did briefly tear up during the conversation, it was in response to what he believed was a genuine compliment from Lively, praising his work as a director and as an actor. In hindsight, Baldoni recognized this as a manipulation tactic, likely intended to persuade him to continue allowing her unchecked control over wardrobe decisions. Lively later leveraged this conversation in support of her allegations of harassment, alleging that Baldoni made inappropriate comments on her appearance. In reality, Baldoni was relaying the distributor's concerns and the widespread social media criticism regarding wardrobe's failures to meet audience expectations, a sentiment Baldoni shared. This incident marked the beginning of a troubled pattern of manipulative behavior by Lively. I mean, it is looking plausible. We've heard these rumors about her onset and her production issues for years. We haven't really heard all of these misconduct allegations from him, especially considering he worked on Jane the Virgin for quite some time. He was very close with Gina Rodriguez, who is the star of Jane the Virgin, right? Not only that, but Jane the Virgin herself, Gina Rodriguez, had Justin Baldoni officiate her wedding. You really think that, she would have him in her wedding, officiating her wedding, if she felt uncomfortable in any way? Then we get to Lively begins rewriting the script. So during a red carpet interview at the New York City celebrity premiere of the film, Lively stated, "The iconic rooftop scene, my husband actually wrote it. Nobody knows that, but you know now." This revelation came as a surprise to the film's credited screenwriter, who, when later interviewed, graciously responded, "So I'm being told that Ryan wrote that. Then great, how wonderful." The screenwriter further acknowledged, "There were a few little flourishes that I did not write, and if those flourishes came from Ryan, I think that's wonderful." Wow, little flourishes. I love it. This was also the first time plaintiffs learned that Reynolds, who had no formal role in the film's production, made unauthorized changes to the script in secret. I would imagine there's a lawsuit coming against Ryan Reynolds for this. And Blake Lively's public proclamation to the press, hence, well, I was going to say slander, but I guess she's not slandering anybody. Technically, it's not defamation, but there will be they'll use her own words against her and how she told the press this key piece. Furthermore, Lively began altering the script daily. The frequency of Lively's revisions alarmed producers, directors, and the studio, who anticipated that her interference would persist every day of the shoot and disrupt the production schedules. Each shooting day was already intricately planned, and her constant changes introduced significant stress on the production crew and financial strain. However, just weeks prior, Lively's husband, Ryan Reynolds, had aggressively berated Baldoni during a meeting at their penthouse in New York, accusing him of fat-shaming Lively. Baldoni, in an effort to avoid further confrontation with Lively and Reynolds and rebuild a rapport with his co-stars, continued to bend to her will. Reynolds and Lively's inappropriate and humiliating berating of Baldoni, delivered perhaps intentionally as other celebrity friends were coming in and out of their penthouse, was prompted by Baldoni's reasonable inquiry into crucial information needed to ensure safety and avoid injury during a scene. Baldoni, while training for a physically demanding scene in which his character Ryle would have to lift Lily, who's Blake's character, asked his trainer, who was introduced to him by Lively and oversaw his training for the film, how much Lively weighed. Baldoni, who suffers from back issues and has multiple bulging discs, made the inquiry to ensure that he would safely perform the lift without injury. Unfortunately, the trainer relayed this information to Lively, who then informed Reynolds. The confrontation that followed was so aggressive that Baldoni felt compelled to offer repeated apologies, despite his question being entirely reasonable and made in good faith. Following the incident, Lively refused to perform the lip scene, even though it had already been rehearsed with a stunt double. Which is interesting because Lively, in her complaint, says that the reality is that the scene never existed. The scene never happened. And so why would he ask about her needing her weight, about lifting her, if there was no need to actually lift her because the scene didn't exist, right? Aaron D in the live chat, smiling with Aaron D. Hi, Aaron D. Aaron D says, remember, guys, to like and subscribe and ring the bell so that you never miss a thing. Share with your friends and family. They need to see this. Yes, if you're watching this on YouTube and you're enjoying today's episode, be sure to hit that thumbs up button so that you can continue to get more content. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell notification button. That way, when new episodes pop up, you get the notification for it. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, definitely be sure to leave a 5-star rating and a nice review. They really do help the show. It's free. It takes like less than a minute to do. So please continue to show the show some love. Same thing on Spotify. You can leave a comment and you can leave a rating if you're listening or watching on Spotify right now. Okay, let's continue. Thank you, Aaron D. Let's continue. In fact, Blake Lively threatened to quit the production altogether despite her contractual obligations. Lively gave Baldoni an ultimatum to either cast someone else or work with her in the ways that she works. It was her way or the highway. Recasting would be a detriment to production. Sever Wayfair's relationships with Sony and cost millions. To highlight the effects of masterful gaslighting, Baldoni and Wayfair also truly believed that in an effort to save herself from backlash of being recast, Lively could leak that she felt fat-shamed by Baldoni, which he thought would ruin his career. Notably, it appears he was not wrong, and despite his efforts to do everything her way, she still tried, continues to try, and arguably did, with the help of the Times, ruin his career, reputation, and well-being. Yeah. Beyond the script revisions, Lively extended her influence over the film to other areas, frequently challenging decisions and asserting herself. She not only rewrote her own dialogue, but also made unilateral changes to other characters' lines, effectively altering the script on a broad scale. This pattern of interference continued to disrupt the production process, often causing stress, chaos, and delays. Over the months leading up to the film's release, Lively and her collaborators consistently scrutinized interactions with Baldoni and employed tactics that fall squarely within the definition of gaslighting. This behavior pressured Sony, Baldoni, and Wayfair into conceding control to Lively at every turn, resulting in her domination of nearly every aspect of the film's production. I would imagine they have text messages and receipts from delivery trucks where they're maybe they have a text message from her assistant saying Blake wants the clothes delivered at her house and she wants the fitting at her house rather than, a car ride 15 minutes to go to try on her clothes. And so I would imagine they'll pull those text messages, they'll pull receipts for the actual, luggage vans that needed to bring all of the costumes over. These are very easy to prove, these claims. So I would imagine they would easily be able to prove them. Next, we have Lively sets the stage for coercion by drafting a protection letter that intentionally misrepresents the nature of the conversations had between Baldoni and or Heath and Lively, demands that Wayfair parties sign for Lively to return to work after the industry strikes. Principal photography began on May 15, 2024, from mid-June to early November 2023. Principal photography began on May 15, 2024. From mid-June to early November 2023, production was suspended due to industry guide strikes. When the strikes ended on November 9th, 2023, production was eager to resume filming and make up for lost time. That day, however, Wayfair received an unsettling and unexpected email from Blake Lively through her counsel containing a 17-point list of non-negotiable conditions that must be met before Lively would return to work. Though Wayfair disagreed as to the basis for requesting these conditions, which insinuated those demands were the results of inappropriate behavior by Baldoni and Heath, the terms were agreeable. Okay, so let's read that again. The Wayfair disagreed on the basis for requesting these conditions. The terms were agreeable and some were already in place. For example, Lively demanded that an intimacy coordinator be present at all times when Lively was on set. In fact, an intimacy coordinator had already been engaged during the first half of production, so Wayfair took no issue with this request. Contrary to Lively's assertion, it was she who refused to meet with the intimacy coordinator to plan out scenes, putting Baldoni in an awkward position of meeting with the intimacy coordinator alone and later relaying sex scene suggestions to Blake Lively in the intimacy coordinator's absence, not only defeating the purpose, but resulting in accusations by the Times that before shooting began, Baldoni wanted to add scenes that Lively considered gratuitous. In fact, these scenes were proposed by the intimacy coordinator. This is well documented in handwritten notes Baldoni took during meetings with the intimacy coordinator. So there was an intimacy coordinator from the beginning. Remember, she's claiming there was not one until she demanded one. A clear, bold-faced lie. Where is Zack reading this from again? I'm reading this directly from Justin Baldoni's lawsuit. So this is what he's claiming in his lawsuit. Baldoni dated handwritten notes from his meeting with the intimacy coordinator, which again, Lively declined attending, were read to Lively at her penthouse, where she insisted she and Baldoni meet to write the scenes together. As it was, the scenes were not written, and it was always Baldoni's intention for them to be written with input from both the intimacy coordinator and Lively, the female gaze that Lively distorts in her CRD complaint, which the Times then publishes. In response to a proposal, this is why when the Times says, what were the inaccuracies? You haven't pointed out a single inaccuracy. Like, I'm reading this and I'm seeing several inaccuracies that they're pointing out that the Times failed to report on, or failed to get both sides, or failed to get detailed context on. In response to a proposal from the intimacy coordinator that Ryle not orgasm after he's satisfied, Lively remarked, "I'd be mortified if that happened to me," to which Baldoni, following Lively's lead in what seemed like an attempt to connect and develop their characters, remarked that those have been some of the most beautiful moments with me and my wife. Wait, let me read this again. In in response to a proposal from the intimacy coordinator that Ryle not climax after he satisfied Lily, Blake said, "I'd be mortified if that happened to me." Like, she'd be mortified if the intimacy coordinator told you to not perform a climax. Perform the fireworks show. And then he said, "Those are the beautiful moments between my wife and I, when they share it together, I guess, when they share that fireworks show together." Lively again distorts this both in the protections for return to production she made Wayfair, Heath, and Baldoni sign, and in the CRD complaint, which the Times publishes as fact without any investigation whatsoever. First, this suggestion did not originate with Baldoni, and Lively knew this. Second, it was Lively who first personalized the scenes. And third, and perhaps most importantly, they were writing scenes for their characters. Oh, interesting. Lively claims that Baldoni made her feel unsafe when he used the word sexy while discussing a wardrobe adjustment, when in fact, Lively herself had previously indicated both verbally and in text messages shown below that she wanted her character's wardrobe to be sexier for a scene in which the characters wore onesies. Lively opted to wear a large coat over hers, obscuring the outfit. Baldoni, as the film's director, suggested she remove the coat, explaining the look would be sexier without it. Lively took offense to the comment and appeared upset, interpreting it negatively rather than as creative direction. Feeling he had upset her, Baldoni apologized, despite having made a professional suggestion as a director. Notably, in a separate text exchange, Lively herself used the word sexy to describe one of her character's outfits while allocating for her own wardrobe choice, an inconsistency that undermines the basis of her complaint. I mean, yeah. Was there like it's wild because it's like, why, as the director, if she wants the character to look sexy, why is he not allowed to then say that, right? Like, she set the precedent, and if he's apologizing, then it's showing that there was this alleged misconduct, and not only that, but then that conduct did not continue, and he apologized for it, meaning the conduct was addressed and immediately, ceased. There was a cease and desist of it. And then there's a text message that verifies that, which we read yesterday. Lively established what language is acceptable to her and what is not at the very outset of the relationship, just 2 days into filming. To use this language herself, then in turn make a note of each instance when her director used this same language also to describe wardrobe and character, is at best a double standard. To generate a list of demands that insinuate that he and his business partner acted inappropriately and refused to work unless they agreed to not do it again is calculating and even extortionistic. Wow, I haven't heard that word before. Extortionistic. But to then, I mean, I know extortion, but I've just never heard it in an istic before. But to then use Wayfair, Baldoni, and Heath's agreement to not do something they already did not do, were not doing, and had no intention of doing, as the basis to file a non-public CRD complaint against them and then release it to the public herself in order to ruin their reputation, is defamation. The Times was directly complicit in this. Yeah, again, this was a confidential CRD complaint that was filed in California that was private. It was confidential. She took that, gave it to the New York Times, and they published the whole PDF and removed the paywall that they normally have on their site. Like, that's like bananas to me, you know? Okay, let's keep going. Lively also established very early on that it was acceptable to be present while Lively was breastfeeding. Both Baldoni and Heath have children and are comfortable around breastfeeding mothers, and Lively seemed equally comfortable. In fact, Baldoni's wife co-founded a company that makes breastfeeding garments, a prototype that originated with his mother when he was a baby. And as revealed in a text message exchange between Baldoni and Lively less than 2 weeks into filming, Lively invited Baldoni into her trailer to rehearse lines while she was pumping breast milk. Lively now alleges that the CRD complained that Baldoni and or Heath would enter her makeup trailer on their own volition while she was breastfeeding. Notably, breastfeeding was an activity she often conducted openly in the presence of both Baldoni and Heath, including during production meetings. So she was openly breastfeeding in front of other people. And then we have the text message that we reviewed yesterday where she invites him. She's like, "I'm just pumping, come into my trailer. Let's review lines." And he's like, "All right, I'll be there in a sec." And then he comes over. In the CRD complaint published in part by The Times, Lively suggested Heath walked into her trailer unannounced while in a state of undress and topless, which is false. Heath was invited into her trailer along with a female producer, Baldoni, and a Sony executive for a meeting requested by Lively. Mr. Heath arrived first to see if Lively was ready for the meeting, and after knocking and being invited in, saw that Lively was breastfeeding. She was not topless, she was having makeup removed from her collarbone fully covered. That was the other thing, is it's like she wasn't naked in a lot of the film, that she wouldn't need to have full body makeup. That usually when you do body makeup, it's usually on your legs or it is on your, your clavicle area, your shoulders. Like anytime I've had body makeup on, it's usually like to like it's put on my arms, and that's to like make them look, a little more toned. Or on my chest or on my neck, but it's never like, I mean, unless I were shirtless, but then you just get a spray tan. So let's see. Heath asked if they should return at a later time, and Blake Lively said no. They could move forward with the meeting as initially planned and would meet with them after she finished removing her body makeup. Roughly 2 weeks later, Lively announced that she thought that she had seen Heath make eye contact with her. Heath immediately apologized and said he didn't even realize he looked her way, in response to which Lively remarked, "I know you weren't trying to cop a look." A reference to this incident conveniently showed up on a document months later, distorted like the others and out of context, in a list that the Times later published as fact. That is true. But by the time Wayfair received the protections for return to production document, Wayfair had invested millions of dollars, completed half of the film with Lively as the lead, and incurred substantial costs in preparation to resume production immediately following the strikes. However, instead of returning to work as anticipated, they received Lively's list of demands. In the spirit of ensuring Lively felt comfortable on set, Wayfair promptly agreed to her terms, despite disagreeing with the insinuations underlying them. Neither Wayfair, Heath, nor Baldoni had engaged in any of the behavior alluded to in the return to protection document, nor did they plan to. They thought that that was the end of it, and they were ready to move ahead and make a great film. It was agreed that filming would resume on January 5th, 2024. On the evening of January 4th, 2024, Baldoni, Heath, and producers Todd Black and Alex Sachs, a representative of Sony and the film's first AD, were invited to Lively and Reynolds' penthouse in New York City. They arrived eager to discuss plans for the next day's filming. Prepared with their production materials, instead, they were blindsided by Lively and Reynolds, who presented a list of grievances that were both unanticipated and troubling. Reynolds launched into a tirade berating Baldoni in what Baldoni later described as a traumatic encounter, stating that he had never been spoken to like that in his life. Reynolds demanded an apology to Lively for actions that were mischaracterized and demonstrably false. When Baldoni resisted apologizing for what he had not done, Reynolds became further enraged. Everyone, including the producer Lively, had asked production to engage, and a representative of Sony was in attendance, left that meeting in shock. The producer offered that in his 40-year career, he had never seen anyone speak to someone like that at a meeting. The Sony representative mentioned that she would often think of that meeting, and her one regret is that she didn't stop Reynolds from berating Baldoni. On the very first page of her CRD complaint, Lively inaccurately claims that the list of 30 items was agreed upon during this meeting. This assertion is categorically false. The 30-point list is strategically positioned to appear as if it was a standalone written document. However, no such document was ever presented to Baldoni, the Wayfair team, or, to their knowledge, anyone else, whether during the meeting or at any other time, and therefore could not have been agreed to. In reality, many of the items were encountered for the first time at the CRD complaint itself and include references to highly disturbing events that never occurred. They repeatedly use the phrase "no more" before each demand, falsely suggesting that these alleged incidents had previously taken place and needed to cease. This implication is not only misleading, but entirely untrue. Baldoni and Heath left the meeting deeply unsettled by the implications of Lively and Reynolds' behavior and the power dynamics at play. Again, completely inappropriate that Reynolds is even in this meeting. He has no control over this film. He's not a producer. He's not financing it. Completely inappropriate. Your husband is never allowed in the boardroom with your executives and is never allowed in the room with your superiors to then berate them. Or as he said, what was it? Speak impassioned, which was what the source in TMZ claimed, that he was stern and impassioned. Like, what? Let's not forget other females made complaints about Justin Baldoni's behavior. Actually, that's also not true either, because as we learned, there was only one formal HR complaint that was ever filed. Okay. One complaint. I feel like this is why I told you guys to bring your notebooks and take some notes. One HR complaint. It was not by Blake Lively. It was not from my understanding, it was not a female that filed this HR complaint, and it was not a complaint against Justin Baldoni. It was actually two crew members that had a dispute over alleged ageism. So, no, there were no other females that filed any formal complaints or filed any HR complaints. Those females have not stepped forward. I know Blake Lively referenced that there was another female actress or that other women on set like felt uncomfortable in some ways, but none of that has been documented. Nobody has come forth. There are no HR complaints that have been presented. So unfortunately, even though that's claimed, there's no evidence to back that up, where there are documents that back up a lot of what Baldoni is claiming in this lawsuit. But the good thing is there were multiple third-party staff members that witnessed what did and did not happen. So I hope those get to speak as well. Well, the interesting thing is in Baldoni, in the evidence that he brings into this lawsuit, or at least what he's shown so far, he shows crew members and other members of production, other members of his team, his PR team, all of their accounts are recorded in these text messages and emails. And so we are seeing them corroborate things that Baldoni is claiming. We don't have any of that third-party corroboration that came from Blake Lively's lawsuit. According to Blake, there was no process or HR to even send a complaint to. If that were true, then how did the two dudes on the crew file their complaint? Again, just because somebody makes an allegation in a civil lawsuit doesn't make it true. Pamela says, not to mention your husband isn't allowed to rewrite scenes in a movie he isn't part of. Exactly. That's where he went wrong, though. It's hard to believe a director or owner of a production company would give someone so much control. He made a huge mistake, should have taken a hit and recast. I don't think that it would have been good for them to recast, and I believe that they feared retaliation from Blake if they recast, which is what he mentions here. But also, they started, we'll get to it in a bit, but they did start to protect themselves as things escalated, which we'll get to in a sec. Faced with mounting pressure and weighing the financial implications of what shutting down a film halfway through production would mean, that's millions of dollars that we're talking about that would just be lost and essentially ruin their relationship with Sony, who was financing the project. Wayfair made the difficult decision to resume production and finish the film despite fears that Lively was intentionally manipulating facts for her own gain. The stakes were extraordinarily high. Financiers had invested substantial resources. Hundreds of cast and crew members had endured months without work due to the strike, and nearly 5 years of development had gone into bringing this film to life. Filming resumed without further grievances or references to prior disputes from Lively, a fact that Lively concedes in her CRD complaint, where she states, the parties agreed to implement and follow the productions for return to production to ensure that the film could be completed, marketed, and released safely and successfully, and it was. Production of the film resumed on January 5th, concluded on February 9, 2024. The film has been a resounding success. That is what Blake agreed. That is what Blake signed off on and was included in her CRD complaint. However, the lasting effects of Lively's allegations left Baldoni uneasy. He and Wayfair continued to make considerable concessions throughout the production, all in the interest of successfully delivering an outstanding film. Next, we get to Lively takes over editing, fires the film's editor and composer, and creates her own version of the film at Wayfair's expense, while the rightful director continues to edit his cut of the film. The Directors Guild of America, DGA, mandates a 10-week protected period during which the director of a feature film is entitled privately to edit the film and assemble their director's cut. This period is considered sacred, providing the director with uninterrupted time to creatively shape the final product. An opportunity to experiment, take risks, and refine until the film fully reflects the artist's vision. For Baldoni, this period represents the pinnacle of the filmmaking process, a time to immerse himself into the creative craft free from external influences, and unfortunately, he was denied this essential experience. Lively requested to join Baldoni in the editing bay. As a seasoned professional with over 20 years of experience in the entertainment industry, having grown up with a family deeply involved in the field, Blake Lively was fully aware of the implications of her request. In fact, her request explicitly acknowledged that it infringed upon Baldoni's protected period. Nonetheless, in the aftermath of the serious false allegations she had leveled against the production, Baldoni, Wayfair, and Sony reluctantly agreed to grant her access to the editing bay for 2 days. Notably, despite her allegations that Baldoni made her uncomfortable, Blake Lively sought to spend prolonged close time with him in the confined and collaborative space of the editing bay. Very good point, too. If he was so creepy and persistently doing these creepy actions towards her, why would she continue to work with him so intimately and so closely in confined spaces? What began as a 2-day collaborative extended into 10 days, during which Lively sought to work alone in the editing bay without Baldoni. Despite Baldoni incorporating 7 pages of her notes into his own edit at the very onset and consistently keeping her involved in every subsequent edit, Lively expressed dissatisfaction with mere collaboration, asserting that she too deserved the opportunity to see her creative vision realized, and she requested exclusive time with the editors. In response, Wayfair flew Baldoni's editor to New York to assist Lively in the process. Eventually, Lively fired the film's editors, replacing them with her own choice, specifically an editor often used by Ryan Reynolds. She also fired the film's award-winning composer, replacing him with composers from Ryan Reynolds' recent project. Against repeated objections, Lively created her own cut of the film at Wayfair and Sony's expense. Sony later informed Wayfair that Lively would not promote the film unless her demands were met. Believing that Lively's edits would simply supplement Baldoni's work, Baldoni continued refining his director's cut. However, faced with the possibility of Lively refusing to promote the film or approve any of the related marketing materials, such as the trailers, the posters, and social media posts, a scenario that would have catastrophic implications, Wayfair and Baldoni felt compelled to acquiesce. This included funding a family and friends screening of a version of the film that they had not approved or even seen entirely at Lively's insistence. Having already invested millions of dollars along with years of time, energy, and personal sacrifice, Wayfair and Baldoni were left with no viable alternatives. Wayfair and Sony found themselves in an unprecedented and uncomfortable predicament. 2 competing versions of the film created by 2 different individuals, one of whom had no contractual or creative right to edit the film, let alone produce their own cut. Faced with Lively's threats to withhold promotion of the film, the studio reluctantly agreed to do an official audience test of both versions, Lively's cut and Baldoni's director's cut, once again at Wayfair and Sony's expense. This decision was made with the understanding that Lively had agreed with Sony that if Baldoni's director's cut tested higher, she would drop the matter and fully cooperate, and Baldoni could proceed finishing the film without Lively's editorial interference. Unsurprisingly, despite Baldoni's cut scoring significantly higher with audiences in film's target demographic, Lively reneged her promise. Re-enged on her promise. She insisted that her cut be the version released to the public, even going so far as to claim that the author of the book would refuse to promote the film if Lively's version was not chosen. Under immense pressure, Sony and Wayfair once again conceded. I don't get why the author of the book had any say in this either. She wasn't an official. She wasn't. I don't know. Can he file a complaint with the Directors Guild, and would it be against Sony since they allowed Lively to take over? I mean, that's what we'll see. I'm pretty sure that's part of what their plan of action will be moving forward. Under the continued threat that, in spite of her contractual obligation, Lively would not promote the film or approve marketing materials, Wayfair agreed at Sony's behest to give Lively a producer credit, but he commands her stop there. Lively then sought the coveted PGA mark. on her producer credit, which is a certified designation licensed by the Producers Guild of America, PGA, to identify producers who have performed the majority of the producing functions on a motion picture. Neither Baldoni nor Wayfair felt Lively fulfilled the requisite criteria to earn this mark. Lively demanded that Baldoni, Heath, and other producers and department heads send letters to the PGA in support of her certification for the PGA mark, despite unanimous recognition of the absurdity and the unsettling nature of what appeared to be an attempt at coercion. Sony and other parties ultimately agreed to submit letters of support. However, because Lively did not perform the duties of a producer and therefore in the professional opinion of the studios did not qualify for the PGA mark, a distinction highly valued and taken very seriously within the industry, Wayfair and Baldoni refused to misrepresent her contributions to the film. Despite having conceded on nearly every other demand at this point, they believed it unjust and unethical to falsely represent the PGA that she had fulfilled the requisite producing responsibilities. Lively, in turn, instructed Sony to tell Wayfair and Baldoni that any goodwill left between us is done. She was upset that they wouldn't send the letter of support for her PGA mark. Eventually, in the face of the persistent threats levied against Wayfair and Baldoni, they were left with little choice but to draft and sign a letter on Lively's behalf. Upon doing so, Heath provided a copy of the letter. This is where they get smart. Heath provided a copy of the letter to Wayfair's lawyers, accompanied by a statement indicating that they signed the letter under duress. So this is where they start to fight back, right? And they're like, hold on, we keep giving her more and more and more to make her happy and to appease her. We let her have control over the wardrobe from day one. We let her have, we let her be titled an executive producer. We let her have editing rights. We let her have all these other things that she's demanding because she'll either not finish filming the film, or she's threatening to not promote the film, or threatening to not approve of the marketing materials like the posters and the social media posts, which she does have a right to. And I would imagine that's in her ledger when she signed on for the film, is the right to be able to approve those marketing materials. But it's like ridiculous. Her and Ryan Reynolds both sound like major divas. Next, we have Lively's successful bullying tactics result in Baldoni's exile from his own film. Ooh, this is where it gets interesting. So that's where we finished the film, and now we get into the promotion of the film. And so people were questioning, like, why is Justin Baldoni not hanging out with the cast? Why is he not on the red carpet with them? Why are Blake and Justin not doing any press together? Here's where we get into why, or at least what they're claiming. Consistent with her pattern of vindictiveness as the premiere of the film approached, Lively instructed Sony that she and the cast would not participate in any marketing or promotion of the film alongside Baldoni. She made certain that Baldoni was removed from all artwork for the film, posters included, and stripped him of his "a film by" credit. Further, Lively and Reynolds unfollowed Baldoni on social media, as did the author of the book, someone with whom Baldoni had maintained a 5-year personal relationship and for whom Baldoni created this opportunity, and other cast members, creating a false impression that Baldoni had done something wrong. It became clear that Blake was working diligently to contrive a narrative that would explain why she took over the film and exiled Baldoni. Baldoni had no intention of ever making this information public, however. He promoted the film as originally intended, gave Lively full credit and praise, and wanted the film to succeed. He wanted to move on. Lively, however, refused to let it go. We have a super chat from Claudia Pimentel. She says the author of the film is really sketchy and probably was regretting selling the rights back in 2019 when it wasn't a full-blown book talk and saw Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds with money in her eyes. Possibly. I don't know. But again, the author of the film is not involved in any of the day-to-day mechanics of what's going on set, right? Like, she signed the rights over. And so, of course, they want her to be included in certain creative pieces of it, but she's not going on. So when Blake Lively is going to her and being like, oh my God, I'm being harassed, or oh my God, he's so inappropriate, all these things, of course the author is going to side with Blake, right? It's a movie about protecting women from abusive men. So that is interesting, you know? Someone says, I thought it was interesting that Baldoni insisting on adding intimate scenes in the film that were not in the book. Well, a ton of scenes are usually added I mean, the book and the film, it's an adaptation, right? And the intimacy coordinator was the one that was leading those intimate scenes, which is why you bring on an intimacy coordinator, which is stated in here. The intimacy coordinator is the one that was suggesting this, or in some cases, not suggesting other things like the double fireworks show, right? Consistent with the pattern of vindictiveness as the film approached, as the premiere for the film approached, Lively instructed Sony that she and the cast would not participate in any marketing. Oh, alongside Baldoni, we already read this. Baldoni later received word that during the premiere of the movie Deadpool and Wolverine, Reynolds approached Baldoni's agent at WME, William Morris Endeavor, and demanded that the agent drop Baldoni. The wielding of power and influence became undeniable. Baldoni and Wayfarer grew increasingly fearful of what Lively and Reynolds were capable of as their actions seemed aimed at destroying Baldoni's career and personal life. So they're saying at the premiere of Deadpool and Wolverine, Ryan Reynolds approached Justin Baldoni's agent and demanded the agent drop Baldoni, which WME is denying. WME says that that's not true, that specific agent, right? Is that what? Let's pull up their statement one more time. WME said in Baldoni's filing, they claimed that Ryan Reynolds pressured Baldoni's agent at the Deadpool Wolverine premiere. This is not true. Baldoni's former representative was not at the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere, nor was there any pressure from Reynolds or Lively to drop Baldoni as a client. So that's what WME is saying. My thing is, it's like, of course, they're naturally going to want to drop Baldoni because the money is with Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. And Baldoni's, not looking very employable at the moment. Lively systematically excluded Baldoni from all marketing and promotional efforts with her and the cast for the film. He was not invited to any cast promotional events, cast screenings, premieres, photo shoots, or any of the cast campaigns. Baldoni was marginalized from the marketing process and left in the dark about the purported marketing plan allegedly created by Lively and Sony, which was later referenced in Lively's CRD complaint as agreed to by all. So he's claiming that approved marketing plan from Sony, that he was unaware of it. While in Sweden celebrating his wife's birthday, Baldoni was informed that Lively demanded he not attend the film's premiere on August 9th, 2024. Lively further threatened that if Baldoni attended the premiere, she and the majority of the cast would boycott. It remained unclear what Lively had communicated to or promised the cast, but they now also refused to attend if Baldoni was present. The fact that Sony advised Wayfarer to concede underscores Lively and Reynolds' immense power and influence. Interesting. So she did not want Justin Baldoni at the film premiere, which is so wild. Baldoni and Wayfarer refused to succumb. There had to have been more. I know Donna Bolling says that she thinks that Blake Lively possibly had feelings for Justin Baldoni. And so there's something more here that we're not seeing. That Baldoni, she really does not like him for some reason. And I don't think that it's just this alleged harassment that she's claiming. I think there's got to be there's a piece of the story that we're not getting, whether it's him really being awful or her disliking him for some other reason that we don't know. Baldoni and Wayfarer refused to succumb to the bullying tactics aimed at preventing them from attending the premiere of their film, which, it's literally his fucking film, a project that they had financed, produced, and owned. This threat marked the culmination of a year-long campaign of intimidation and harassment. Although objectively, egregiously, and shocking, the Wayfarer team had unfortunately grown accustomed to the bullying, fully aware of the immense power this couple wielded and the far-reaching extent of their influence. However, they refused to concede to this demand. So you can understand why he wants to have a crisis PR team, because you don't know what she's going to do. You don't know what she's going to say. You don't know what allegations she might put out there, especially if he's not at the premiere. She didn't want him at the premiere. She could very easily drop something on the red carpet, which is what his crisis PR team was preparing for, that she would say something or allude to something as to why he wasn't in attendance. Just days before the film's premiere, Baldoni was still unsure if he would even be allowed to attend. His friends and family, many traveling from outside New York, were left in limbo, unable to finalize travel plans or book flights. Finally, through Sony, Wayfair persuaded Lively to permit Baldoni and the Wayfair team, along with their family and friends, to attend, though only under demeaning and humiliating conditions. They were relegated to a separate theater to view the film, required to arrive at a different time than the rest of the cast, and instructed to leave the venue immediately after Lively arrived. Baldoni was also excluded from the official celebrity after party, despite it being a paid event by Wayfair. Imagine having to pay for a party that you're not allowed to attend. That's wild. As a result, Baldoni had to quickly organize and personally fund a separate after party for himself and the Wayfair team, forcing the company to cover the costs of 2 events, one for Lively and one for their own friends and family, crew, and team. Upon arrival, Baldoni began participating in red carpet photos and interviews. However, his efforts were abruptly cut short when it was conveyed to him that Lively was on her way, and he was instructed to stop immediately. He and his family were quickly ushered away. Security personnel, acting as though there was a risk to escape, escorted Baldoni and group to the basement of the building. There, they were confined to a makeshift area surrounded by concession stand stock, with only fold-out tables and chairs arranged in a square. Surrounded by close friends, family, soda bottles, and a lot of love, the irony of being held in a basement on what was arguably one of the most important nights of Baldoni's career thus far was not lost on anyone. Once the main theater was deemed clear of Lively and her guests, Baldoni and his group were ushered into a separate theater to view the film. At the conclusion of the screening, they were again quickly escorted out by security out of the building to avoid even the chance of an interaction with Lively and her guests. The Wayfair after party, held separately from the celebrity event, was a dry gathering reflecting on the values and themes that Wayfair stands for. It was attended by the entire Wayfair team from Los Angeles and their friends and family. The atmosphere and the tone of the Wayfair after party were aligned with Baldoni's vision for the film, focusing on celebration and gratitude. In the meantime, Baldoni was sidelined as Lively and Sony pressed forward with his original promotional strategy for the film. This plan, outlined in his initial proposal to Sony years prior, shared with Lively and communicated numerous times to both Sony and Lively, centered a partnership with the organization No More. Founded in 2013, No More is a global initiative aimed at raising awareness, inspiring action, and sparking conversation to end domestic violence and sexual assault. Baldoni's collaboration with the organization began in 2022 and held deep personal significance, staying true to his purpose for undertaking the film. Baldoni prioritized amplifying the voices of survivors of domestic violence. His efforts reflected the heart of the film's story and the profound impact on audiences. He returned to the core reason for embarking on the project in the first place, his initial outreach to the author of It Ends With Us 5 years earlier, focusing on the film's message and its potential to create positive change. Baldoni poured himself into ensuring its success despite the mounting challenges. These genuine efforts aimed at amplifying the voices of survivors impacted the film were later mischaracterized and weaponized against Baldoni. The Times, failing to do its due diligence before publishing the article, describes these genuine efforts to bring attention to a serious issue as part of the calculated campaign to destroy Lively's reputation, and in doing so participated in destroying the plaintiffs' lives. Baldoni is forced to hire public relations to combat Lively's negative press. Ooh. Okay, we have quite a few pages to still get through, but it looks like we may be able to power through it. Baldoni, okay, he's forced to hire public relations. In direct response to Lively's oppressive tactics, as described herein, Wayfair and Baldoni retained Melissa Nathan, and the tag team as a protective measure ahead of the film's premiere. Contrary to the Times portrayal, TAG, which is Nathan's company, TAG's engagement focused exclusively on a defensive strategy and fact verification, though as is standard industry practice, TAG prepared for the worst case scenarios based on Lively and Reynolds' prior behavior. No aggressive tactics such as astroturfing. Remember, I kept questioning, well, what is this where are they claiming this astroturfing? Were ever employed. No aggressive tactics such as astroturfing were ever employed. TAG maintained this defensive position throughout the engagement, verifying facts and correcting misinformation without retaliation, a strategy endorsed by Baldoni and Wayfair in an effort to reprioritize the film's significant social message. Meanwhile, Lively's publicist, Sloan, launched a negative press push against Baldoni. At least as early as August 1st, 2024, TAG was made aware of Sloan planting unfavorable, false, and defamatory stories about Baldoni's Baha'i faith to Page 6. Sloan proceeded to feed false stories to the Daily Mail and the New York Times containing allegations that Baldoni was a sexual predator. Sloan would also plant a false story alleging that there were multiple HR complaints during production. This in addition to Sloan weaponizing Baldoni and Wayfair, hiring TAG and Melissa Nathan, which is interesting because then they actually have Leslie Sloan's text messages, which we went through yesterday as well. They have the text messages with Leslie Sloan. They have a series of text messages from Leslie Sloan. And it looks like between Leslie Sloan and Melissa Nathan, or Leslie Sloan and Jennifer Abel, which go back and forth about, all of these different leaks that were happening. And we also have text messages from reporters that confirm the information that they were getting. So that's another really smoking gun in all of this, is they have all of these details and all of these messages from Sloan and reporters. In spite of Sloan's efforts to lambast Baldoni and Nathan, it was Lively who ultimately stirred up her own public ridicule. And then they reference different articles. Here's what's going on with It Ends With Us, with the Ends With Us drama. Blake Lively goes into damage control, finally addressing the DV, and It Ends With Us amid criticism over tone-deaf film promo from the Daily Mail. We have Blake Lively fans blast It Ends With Us actress over tone-deaf and shallow interview with co-stars in the Daily Mail. We have people are disgusted by Blake Lively's cutesy press tour for It Ends With Us from the Daily Mail. We have Blake Lively dragged for marketing light of domestic violence from the Daily Beast. Why is everyone mad at Blake Lively from Vox? Fans are not impressed with Lively's press tour from The Cut. The It Ends With Us promo has failed DV survivors like me in Glamour magazine. We have Blake Lively's It Ends With Us promotion called disrespectful by some survivors in NBC News. We have sorry Blake Lively, using a movie about DV to sell stuff is not a good look in The Guardian. We have It Ends With Us was already problematic. Blake Lively's press tour makes it worse in The Cut. So they list out and link all these different articles, right? Which I don't believe they would be doing if they were the ones behind these articles. If they planted these articles, why would they then showcase and link out to each of these articles in their lawsuit? If there wasn't evidence, there wouldn't be evidence to link it back to them. Indeed, while Baldoni sought to focus on the film's central premise, Lively incensed audience with seemingly flippant and tone-deaf remarks, encouraging viewers to grab your friends and wear your florals. Embarrassed by the self-induced backlash, Lively now seeks to vilify Baldoni in a dubious attempt to resuscitate her public image. While the Times thrusts allegations of an offensive smear campaign concocted by plaintiffs, the incomplete and misleading evidence supplied by Lively, and which the LA Times purports to rely, proffers a warped view of reality, setting aside the unscrupulous means by which the cited communications were obtained. The Times, as with Lively's CRD complaint, deliberately takes these communications out of context and bolsters a fallacious narrative designed in cohort with Lively to quash plaintiffs. When viewed in full context, these hand-picked, doctored communications lose their manufactured impropriety and disprove Lively's allegations, which is true. And then they show a side-by-side. I think I showed this side-by-side yesterday. that show them actually doctoring the text messages. And we see Blake Lively's team here on the left under complaint. We see them rewriting the messages rather than using screenshots. And we see Baldoni posting the actual screenshot of the messages and showing that there's a whole lot of additional messages in between the messages they cherry picked and included. So, and then we also showed they removed certain emojis to make to change the tone to make it sound more literal rather than sarcastic. So tactics like that are really, to me, those were some of the more damaging pieces of the allegations. And that does continue with additional messages that they would, there was like a whole thread and they would pick this message and that message and then include those, rewrite those messages and then include them as if they were, two messages back to back, leaving out all the other pieces, which felt very strategic, right? Like they included this text message, but they included 1, 2, and 3 text messages that were part of a single thread, but excluded 1, 2, 3, 4 text messages that were in between those 3 messages that were presented by Blake Lively's team. So it is very cherry picked. It is very convenient. And it's not just an allegation, right? They're literally showing them side by side and showing the differences in the messages and the alteration, right, of removing the emoji. Because an eye roll emoji shows, and listen, and they have several different ones. I didn't realize, I don't think I've even seen all of these, but they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's one. So that's 6 pages of text messages with including here's one thread, another thread, a third thread. Yeah, they have multiple different threads underlined in red, different wow, this is pretty damaging. It's a lot worse than what I read yesterday. In the article, The Times writes, Lively's filing includes excerpts from thousands of pages of text messages and emails that she obtained through a subpoena. These and other documents were reviewed by the New York Times. However, the Times failed to review and investigate the plethora of communications demonstrating that plaintiffs had zero intention of smearing Lively and every intention of simply promoting the film and its message. Here's a one from Justin Baldoni on August 11th. Good morning, team. So I was thinking about the response to this weekend, and I feel that what we should do is to make sure to emphasize the voices of the survivors. It's going to be a lot of buzz on how much money the movie made, but I want to be the one that is always direct. It's going to be a lot of buzz how much money the movie made, but I want to be the one that always directs it back to the survivors. So I would love to come up with some sort of video or carousel of images from survivors and the response to the film. So whether you think that this is self-serving or not, it's very different from the strategy Blake was, promoting. And even if they told her we want to keep the tone uplifting, promoting your alcohol brand and telling people to, bring your friends and wear your florals, like it's wild. And then we get into all of the social media chatter. We see more communications from his team, monitoring the online backlash, but making it clear that they're not engaged. Like Justin's like, this isn't us, right? And they're like, no, this isn't us. We have all of those text messages, many of which we went over yesterday. It's crazy. Yeah, Justin Baldoni, a screenshot of a profile. This is an example of someone trolling Blake on all of my posts, but it doesn't seem like a real account. Yet it could also be an actual troll. They exist too. But yes, 100%, this is not anyone from your team whatsoever. It's a text message. It looks like on August 26th of Baldoni saying, who is this person that is following me and trolling Blake? And they're saying, it could just be an actual troll, but it has nothing to do with anyone on your team whatsoever. So they're assuring him that there is no takedown. So remember when we were reviewing Blake Lively's lawsuit earlier, which we went in depth with and read through last week, but when we were talking about what she would have to prove about Justin Baldoni being behind, this attack on Blake Lively, these text messages tell a very different story, that he didn't want his team to attack them. So he was not orchestrating this PR attack against her. Worse still, there are documented communications overlooked by Lively and the Times that expressly refute Lively's erroneous accusation. By way of example, through the Times admits that they had access to thousands of relevant text messages and emails, its skewed reporting makes painfully obvious that it failed to substantiate the false accusations hurled by Lively. Indeed, the objective evidence refutes any allegations that plaintiffs engaged in a smear campaign to bury Lively and destroy her reputation. Lively's wound was entirely self-inflicted. The plaintiffs retained crisis public relations to defend against Lively's unrelenting assault does not change this fact. Oh, then they bring in Stephanie Jones. Ooh, this is also interesting. Curiously, neither Lively CRD complaint nor the article make any mention of embattled publicist Stephanie Jones. Jones, a former publicist to Wayfair, now insists, as a separate lawsuit filed in New York, that she was swept up in the plaintiff's so-called smear campaign. And yet, on August 14, 2024, Jones sent an email to Jamie Heath, the CEO of Wayfair, detailing her recommended strategy. And then we have the strategy here. Flood the zone with positives. We need to ensure that we promote positive narratives that media outlets cannot ignore. Currently, most stories are heavily biased towards Blake's perspective, leaving Justin unrepresented. It's crucial that we fight for every inch of the story, which requires far more effort than typical crisis PR wants to put forth in our experience working with specialized teams. So this is from Stephanie Jones. Prepare alternate stories. We should mobilize a robust network of supporters and third-party advocates ready to counter these narratives and deep background, as well as some of the record, making it clear that these claims being made are untrue and unfounded. Remember, Stephanie Jones came out and she's like, I fired Jennifer Abel, and I had no idea that there was this smear campaign, yet you have her own communications where she's engaging in this crisis PR strategy. Wayfair later terminated Jones for, among other things, having alleged leaked information to the Daily Mail, despite specific instruction from Wayfair not to. So they're claiming that Stephanie Jones leaked things to the Daily Mail, even though they specifically told her not to. And Jones said that she fired Jennifer Abel for trying to hijack and steal Justin Baldoni as a client from her Jones Work PR firm. Jones is notorious for extracting her revenge on any client brave enough to escape her grasp. Jones is equally notorious for her alleged maltreatment of current and former employees alike. Wayfair and Abel are no exception. It's hardly coincidence that all of the communications in which Lively and the Times now rely were purposefully produced by Jones Company, Jones Work LLC, pursuant to subpoena. The propriety of this alleged subpoena is unverified and, at minimum, highly questionable given Jones' involvement and the means by which Jones first obtained these confidential communications. Abel, a former employee of Jones Work, was forced to relinquish her electronic devices when confronted by a Jones Work security guard and attorney upon her separation from the company 6 weeks after she had put in her notice and shared her plan to start her own business. Jones, on the heels of a damning Business Insider article and hemorrhaging clients, insisted that Abel turn over her electronic devices to Jones Work and delete all confidential and proprietary information therefrom. Though Jones initially agreed to release Abel's personal cell phone number, she reneged. 4 months later, what is this word? Why can I not read this word? I keep seeing it pop up. She reneged, Reneged. Is my brain just broken today? 4 months later, Abel's text messages are now the subject of Lively's CRD complaint and the article published by the Times. Plaintiffs are informed and believe that Jones invited the subpoena to circumvent her confidentiality obligations to Wayfair and inflict in the most unethical form of revenge. The Times then publishes a false and defamatory article based on Lively's administrative complaint. The New York Times is one of the most widely read newspapers in the United States, and once upon a time served as a primary newspaper of record, publishing all the news that fits to print. The Times was considered a paragon of journalistic integrity and excellence, the gold standard for journalism in the United States, and a highly respected news outlet internationally. For generations, the paper's historical influence on socio-political and cultural life of the country and its institutions could not be overstated. Americans long relied on the Times as a source of accurate and balanced news reporting. Viewpoint-based commentary relied on the Times as a source of accurate and balanced news reporting. Viewpoint-based commentary was expressly excluded from news stories. Indeed, for years, America grew up with the expect that the Times would, as legendary Times executive editor A.M. Rosenthal said, tell it straight, or in other words, simply report the news without embellishing or driving it. For much of this storied history, whether it was civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, Watergate, or other political and cultural issues, through its objective investigative reporting and diverse views presented in its op-ed pages, the Times strove to inform America through high journalistic standards, accuracy, and fairness. The publication has won far more Pulitzer Prizes than any other media company in U.S. history, with its first being awarded more than 100 years ago. But over the last 20 years, Times reporters have ever more frequently veered spectacularly from their own journalistic guidelines. As a result, it has become a commonplace to find the New York Times stories containing egregious factual errors and infected with bias. Such lapses have contributed to the public distrust of the Times and a landscape where partisan actors can cry fake news with some justification. Which, I mean, hello. We've seen the downfall of mainstream media, and the New York Times is absolutely part of that. But the New York Times still wields a powerful and influential megaphone in the media and greater society. It is therefore under the solemn obligation to do the work necessary to get its reporting right. As reporters at the Times well known, getting it wrong can lead to disastrous outcomes for story subjects, including financial, professional, and reputational ruin. As the New York Times sets the narrative and tone for other news organizations, amplifying the impact of its mistakes, the instant case is emblematic of the Times having lost its way, as the facts here make it plain that the Times failed to follow its own journalistic standards, rushed to judgment, and with careless disregard, published a story accusing plaintiffs of waging a smear campaign against Lively, causing a feeding frenzy based on demonstratively false premise. At 9:43 p.m. Eastern Time on December 20th, TUI requested plaintiffs' response to its reporting regarding a crisis communication operation conducted on behalf of Justin Baldoni, Jamie Heath, and Wayfair Studios to protect the reputations and harm Blake Lively's, as described in a legal complaint filed today. TUI wrote, in part, we are seeking a response to the claims of retaliation through this PR campaign and would welcome the opportunity to talk with you on the record. Please offer any on-the-record comment as well as any information you think we should know. Additionally, please notify us of any inaccuracies. We need to hear back from you by tomorrow noon Eastern. At 2:26 Eastern Standard Time, plaintiff's legal representative responded as follows. It's shameful that Miss Lively and her representatives would make such serious and categorically false accusations against Mr. Baldoni, Wayfair Studios, and its representatives, as yet a desperate attempt to fix her negative reputation, which was garnered from her own remarks and actions during the campaign for the film, interviews, and press activity that were observed publicly in real time, unedited, which allowed for the internet to generate their own views and opinions. These claims are completely false, outrageous, and intentionally salacious, with an intent to publicly hurt and rehash a narrative in the media. Wayfair Studios made the decision to proactively hire a crisis manager prior to the marketing campaign of the film to work alongside their own representative with Jones' work employed by Stephanie Jones due to multiple demands and threats made by Miss Lively during production, which included her threatening to not show up to set, threatening to not promote the film, ultimately leading to the demise during release if her demands were not met. It was also discovered that Miss Lively enlisted her own representative, Leslie Sloan with Vision PR, who also represents Mr. Ryan Reynolds, to plant negative stories, completely fabricated and false stories with the media, even prior to any marketing had commenced for the film, which was another reason why Wayfair Studios made the decision to hire crisis professionals to commence internal scenario planning in the case that they needed to address. The representatives of Wayfair Studios still did nothing proactive nor retaliated, and only responded to incoming media inquiries to ensure balanced and factual reporting and monitored social activity. What is pointedly missing from the cherry-picked correspondence in the evidence what is potentially missing from the cherry-picked correspondence is the evidence that there were no proactive measures taken with media or otherwise, just internal scenario planning and private correspondence to strategize, which is a standard operating procedure with public relations professionals. At 10:11 a.m. Eastern Time on December 21st, 2024, the Times published the article. Notwithstanding that the Times was made aware of the egregiously defamatory allegations contained therein, it proceeded with publication without further inquiry. Indeed, it is a rush to publish a one-sided, unsubstantiated story on behalf of Miss Lively. The Times got it drastically wrong. The aftershocks have been disastrous for plaintiffs, and they now reluctantly, knowing the damage cannot be fully undone, bring suit to hold the Times accountable for its egregious misfire. Whew. And that is where it ends. And then they have all the things that they list out, all the things that they're suing for. Libel, which again we broke down yesterday. Oh man, oh man, oh man. Claudia has a lot of super chats today. Thank you, Claudia. Claudia says, no matter how sketchy this whole thing is and how guilty or not guilty Justin Baldoni is for real, he's done in Hollywood, and I don't think she and Ryan will face lasting backlash for this. Just look at Depp. No, I actually disagree. I think Justin Baldoni, he will struggle to get back on his feet after this. I think his reputation is irrefutably damaged at this point, even if he is exonerated in the end. But I do see Blake and Ryan Reynolds going down. I see I mean, I don't know. Maybe Ryan Reynolds is just so bankable right now that Hollywood will protect him and by proxy protect her as well. But the public is done with them. I don't think the public, and listen, the public drives more than Hollywood does. Hollywood, the land of Oz, doesn't have the power that it once held. And so, unfortunately, I think it's going to dwindle. Reneged? So yeah. Well, Janelle. We'll see what happens. Disney will have to protect Ryan Reynolds. Will they? Because they didn't protect Johnny Depp. But maybe they learned from that mistake. And maybe they will protect Ryan Reynolds so that they don't have that same issue. But listen, celebrity holds little weight in this age. Yeah, that's the thing. Celebrity holds little weight. And reneged. Oh, got it. Rhymes with egged. Reneged. Okay, thank you. I don't know why my brain was just not computing with that word. Look at how long Woody kept working even after public backlash. Yeah, listen, we can't really relate what's happening now to what happened before because the entire game is changing, right? Everything has changed with social media, with TikTok, with people giving you access to information. Like as of right now, X and TikTok drive media and news more than the New York Times does anymore. We're pushing this shit out so much quicker. Like social media has completely changed the game. And it also is very good at swaying public, public opinion. I have like a random hair sticking out. Is that a dog hair or my hair? We are a canceled culture. Well, I mean, I think, but listen, we saw the power of social media when we were canceling people, right? So now, my hair is driving me crazy. We saw the power of social media when everyone was getting canceled, especially like in 2020, right? And now, I think I got it. Okay. And now, like, we're seeing the responsibility that comes with that. And people are over cancel culture. People are over, having to be policed or told what to do or having the media manipulate people. So, yeah. YouTube. Yep. YouTube's another good. YouTube, podcasts, TikTok, Instagram, X. I think they're all really good. I mean, when Elon, love him or hate him, but when Elon Musk says that the power of media is back in the hands of the people, he's not lying. I think community notes is a really smart way for people to correct people, fact check things. We're completely changing the game. Yeah, you're right. It's actually shocking to see how much both lawsuits are based off of social media perception. Let's hope the consumers have more saying these days. Yeah, the times are changing. That's true. I think Blake is doing, Yvette says, I think Blake is doing, I don't believe anybody would be wanting to work with her anymore. Yeah, I think that again, based off of their traditional media tactics, based off of their traditional PR plans, based off of what Hollywood used to be, This would have worked 10 years ago. You would have buried Justin Baldoni and he would have been done, right? If this were 2015, done. In this day and age, not so much. All right. We're already at the 2-hour mark. So if you guys are enjoying the podcast, definitely, first of all, if you're watching this live on YouTube, hit the like button before you dip on out. Subscribe, hit the bell button. That way you get the notifications. I will keep you posted as this continues to unfold. And right now, it's a daily unfolding. But if you want to follow more from me, you can follow me at Just Plain Zack. You can follow the podcast. I do, more bite-sized content on Instagram at No Filter with Zack on Instagram, or you can follow on TikTok. I'm at Just Plain Zack all over the internet. Name is Zack Peter. Podcast is No Filter with Zack Peter. New episodes stream live on YouTube Monday through Friday mornings and are immediately available on all podcast platforms. So if you're listening to this on Apple, please leave me an Apple Podcast rating. It's free. It's easy to act. It's easy to do. And it really helps, with charts. It really helps with, gaining new subscribers and people trusting that the podcast is really good. As of right now, all my Apple ratings say that I hate women because I was critical of Blake Lively in her lawsuit. But hopefully now that we're getting more details, hopefully I don't hate women as much anymore. So if you don't think I hate women, then please leave me an Apple Podcast review telling people I don't actually hate women, because I love women very much, even though I am gay. I love women and dick. So there you go. Thank you guys for tuning in to No Filter with Zack Peter. Like I said, stream live Monday through Friday mornings. So be sure to tune in. I love you. I appreciate you. Have a great weekend. We will have a members only. Wait, is today Friday? Oh, today is Friday. Oh my God. I just fell out of a coconut tree. I'm like so thrown off with the holiday schedule. We will have a members only today. So if you're a member on YouTube members, we will have a YouTube membership members only live today. Sorry, my brain's scattered, but I love you. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you later, guys. I'll talk to you again. New episode comes on Monday. All right, guys. Love you. Mean it. Bye.